Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at game number 10 of the 2024 FIDE World Chess Championship being held in Singapore between Liren from China and Gukesh Domoraju from India. Now, the match is all tied up. Both players have 4.5 points. It's been deadlocked. There have been 6 draws in a row. And today, Ding has the white pieces. And let's see if we're going to get some excitement. So the game starts off with a move d4 from Ding, and now we get to move knight f6, and here we have the move knight to f3. Now this, of course, all very standard so far, nothing too surprising, other than the fact that we don't get c4 on move 2. Now early in the match, I believe it was in the third game of the match, Gukesh actually with the white pieces played d4, knight f6, knight f3. Wasn't really sure why he did that or what exactly it avoids, but it is what it is. So we get knight f3. Gukesh plays move d5, and now we get the move bishop f4. Now this, of course, is the London system, which Ding did play earlier in the match. It comes as a little bit of a surprise to those of us who are watching because, frankly, in my opinion, when you play the London system, one of the biggest advantages is that it is a big surprise. But in this case, it cannot come as a surprise because he's already played it in this match. So after bishop to f4, we get the move e6 being played here by Gukesh, and now Ding plays e3. Here we get the move c5, and now we have bishop e2. Now earlier in the match, Ding did play the move c3 here. We got, I believe, bishop d6, bishop b5, and knight c6. The game would end in a draw. Was the one moment in this match where Ding potentially had some winning chances with the white pieces. Obviously, he drew quickly. Everyone was really unhappy about that, but it is what it is. Now in this game, we get to move bishop to e2, and it's very apparent to me at this point that there is one clear influence on Ding Liren in this match, similar to the previous match he played against Jan Nepomniachtchi 2 years ago, and that influence is, of course, the famous Hungarian Grandmaster Richard Rapport, who is having a major impact on the opening preparations that Ding is doing for this match. Now you might wonder, why am I saying that? Now, earlier in the match, I don't know if I have the exact move order correct, but there was a game between Ding and Gukesh, which occurred with b3, bishop f5, and I believe it was here that Ding played bishop f3. Now, in my earlier recap, I alluded to this, but this was an idea that I looked at for Richard Rapport when I played him in the 2022 FIDE Grand Prix event held in Germany in my mini match against him. So this idea could have come from nobody else other than Richard, and today's game, when we get the move bishop e2, this is also another system that, surprise, surprise, Richard Rapport has played with the white pieces. So we get bishop to e2. Now we have the move bishop to d6, and we get the move d takes c5. Now what Ding is trying to do here is he's very cleverly trying to transpose, and by transpose we mean we go from one opening to another from the London system into a Queen's Gambit decline. Now, I'm not exactly sure how you get this exact position from the Queen's Gambit decline, but just to show you a similar position, you can get something like this with knight f3, d5, knight c3, c5, something like bishop f4, knight 6 takes e3, and castles, and this will end up in a very similar situation. So when we get this position with d takes c5, bishop takes c5, and c4, it's very clear that Ding is trying to transpose into a Queen's Gambit decline, and he just wants to play a rock solid position here and create some play. So we get castles here from Gukesh, and now Ding castles back, and here we get the move knight to c6 being played. Now the game continues with knight c3, and here Gukesh plays the move d takes c4. Now already here, those of us who are watching the game live, we were letting out a big groan because you get the sense this game already is trending towards something which is going to end in a draw. So we get the move d takes c4 being played, and now Ding plays bishop takes pawn. Here we get the move knight to h5, and this is a move that actually allows for there to be some play in the position. Here it's possible to simply trade the queens on d1 and play something like b6, and white is maybe marginally better, but we are straight into an endgame here. And one other thing that I mentioned in yesterday's recap, or I should say game 9 because it was 2 days ago, is that when the pawns are all on the same files, you have symmetrical pawns on the king side and on the queen side. Generally speaking, this leads to situations where the game is very likely to end in a draw. So we get knight to h5. Now I do applaud Gukesh for playing this move. He takes quite a bit of time, 28 minutes before playing this move, but it also gives Ding the chance here to try and play for more. Now there are a couple of options here. For white, you can play the move that Ding plays in the game, which is bishop g5, but you also have some other exciting possibilities, which is you can play the queen to either c2 or e2. Now in this position, Ding could have played the move queen e2. This was mentioned by the former world chess champion, the 5-time, in fact, Vishy Anand from India, who did mention queen e2 here, because after black takes here, white gets double pawns, but after queen c7 and g3, white can put these rooks on the c and d files very, very quickly, try to create some counterplay, and maybe their chance to win the game. Another option here is to play the move queen to c2, and the point is that now after takes here, knight takes, pawn takes, maybe you can go for knight g5, threaten the checkmate on h7, maybe you can move the knight or the bishop and put pressure on the c file. At any rate, there are some potential big right triangles looming here, so it gives white some chances. However, there is one drawback. You are giving black the 2 Bs here, and queens stay on the board. Now, do I think this is risky? No, it almost certainly is not risky, but it means the game goes on. Now, in this situation, Ding decides ultimately to play bishop g5 instead, and once I saw this move on the board, I knew that the game was headed in a very clear-cut direction towards a boring draw. However, I did learn my lesson from the other day when I started my recap early, and unfortunately the game continued on and we had to sort of eventually end the recap. We sort of pre-moved it, as they would say, and I wasn't very happy about it. So that's why when this move was played, I did not start my recap, but I was already thinking about doing it for you guys out there. So after bishop g5, we get to move bishop to e7, and now we get knight to e4, and here Gukesh plays knight f6. Now Gukesh could trade the queens on d1, but if you trade the queens on d1 here, your knight on h5 is a little bit out of play on the king side. White's knight is jumping to d6, the sample line takes, let's say we get this, and suddenly after knight d6 followed by rook c1, there's a lot of pressure here on the queen side, and white is significantly better. But Gukesh plays knight f6, rock solid move, eliminating the knight from the rim. He just brings it back, and here if white could magically get a couple more moves, let's say you get some position like this, for example, the rook coming to d1, if you get your maximum development while black still is the queen side underdeveloped, there are chances to win the game, but you need quite a bit of time in order to execute that plan. So after knight to f6 here, Ding plays the move knight takes knight, and now we get bishop takes, and we get to move rook fd1. Now you all at home are probably wondering, what is this nonsense? We're headed towards a very, very drawish position. Black has slight issue with the pawns, you have the double pawns on f7 and f6, but frankly the fact that black can develop this bishop and bring the other rook to the center means that black is not in any danger whatsoever, and we are going to have our most boring game of the match. So after rook fd1, we get to move bishop to d7 being played by Gukesh. Now he is completing his development, bringing the rook to the center of the board, and at this point, due to the symmetrical nature of the pawn structure, there is really just not a lot that either side can do. Now, what do I think about this? It's very clear to me that Ding at this point, he is happy to be rock solid. I've said this 5 times already, maybe too much coffee. He wants to be solid, he is not willing to take many chances, and he's really putting the onus on Gukesh to go for something. So we get rook a(c1), bishop to e8, and now Ding trades the rooks, and here he goes king f1. We get king g7, a3, and now we have the move f5 being played. Now for Gukesh, he's trying to bring his king to the center, but at the same time, he's also creating a bit of the diamond hands formation with this mini triangle here. The pawns are very solid, even though they're on the same color as the bishop. As long as the base is solid on f7, which it is, it guards a pawn. This one guards that one. There's no danger whatsoever. So we get the move king to e1. Gukesh plays king to f6, and now we get this move bishop to e2 being played. Now at this point, Ding is simply retreating the bishop. Maybe long term, if he has the option, he would love to get something like, let's just say knight e7, knight d4, let's just say a6, bishop f3, and now you have a bastion in the center of the board. This knight can target the pawns, the bishop on f3 can target the pawn on b7, and maybe white can claim a small advantage. You'll also notice here that the bishop is doing nothing on this diagonal. All the pawns are guarded, so the bishop not having any scope is pretty much a dead wooden shield. So we get bishop to e2. Now Gukesh does play knight to e7, and here we get this move g3 being played. Now at this point, you're probably thinking, why not rook c7? As Hikaru would say himself, go for the kebab, put the rook on the 7th rank, create all these threats, go for the memes, win the game. Now it looks really nice on the surface to play rook c7, but here black has 2 options. The first one is to play rook d7, simply offering the trade of the towers here. If you go back, I'll play rook d8 and offer a draw, but additionally there's also the possibility to go bishop c6 here, and suddenly you could end up in a classic spaghetti-o situation very quickly. Let's just say you go b4, and after knight to d5, suddenly your rook is trapped here. You're gonna lose the rook, and with it you are going to lose the game due to the material deficit. So we get this move here, G3 being played by Ding. A logical move here is now he puts all his pawns on the dark squares. This is the opposite color of this bishop. You'll notice there's a light square B. It can target all the light squares, but in classic fashion, when you get to end games with bishops on the board, you don't want the bishop to have targets. So when you can put all the pawns on the opposite color, the bishop simply can't touch anything. So after G3 here, we now get this move rook to C8, and this is very clearly a draw offer from Gukesh here. He's simply offering to trade the towers on the open file, and here if Ding does not trade the rook, say he goes like rook to B1, black, if anything, could maybe claim an advantage with bishop C6 followed by bishop to E4, E5, and maybe rook C2, creating a kebab. So at this point, even though maybe some players would want to play on, you're in a situation where it just doesn't make sense here, and so we get the trade of the rooks. Takes, and now we get this move knight to D2 being played here by Ding, and this move is just a very boring move. At this point, neither side can really do a whole lot. It's clearly a situation where the players just want to trade out the pieces, make a repetition, or reach move number 40. Keep in mind they're not allowed to make a draw before move 40, or else this game would have already ended on this move, or maybe even 2 or 3 moves earlier. So we got the move knight d2. Now we have knight d6 from Gukesh, and here Ding plays knight c4, a simple move to force the trade of the knights here. Now in this position, we get the move knight takes knight, bishop takes, and at this point, even though the bishops are the same color here, the pawns are mostly on the opposite color. There are no real weaknesses for either side, and the game will just be a draw. So here we got the move bishop c6. Ding plays f4, trying to lock these pawns on the same color as his bishop, but it doesn't really matter because after f4 and b6, you can't really attack the pawns. The pawns are all guarded by the king, and there are no major weaknesses. So now they simply play a few more token moves before agreeing to a draw. So here we got the move king d7, king d2. Now we get king to e7, king c3, king to d6 being played, and here we have the move b4. Now Gukesh plays move f6 here, and one thing that's very important to note, especially in bishop and pawn endgames, is that there's a common theme, which is what you need in order to win one is you need an outside pass pawn potentially, or you need 2 weaknesses to target. Now after we get this move f6 being played here, what Gukesh can do down the road is, let's just say you get bishop e2 and e5. You'll notice here that black has 1 weakness, is pawn on f5, but the thing is, it's 1 weakness. You need there to be 2 weaknesses, and with only 1 weakness even here, there's really no way to win the game. So after bishop to e2 is played here in this position, sorry, not bishop to e2, after f6 is played here, we get the move king to d4, and now Gukesh plays h6. Now most of his pawns are on the dark squares as well. You'll notice that all of white's pawns opposite color of the bishop. Now Gukesh also has 1 2 3 4 on the opposite color, so he's going to play e5 at some point and literally only have 1 pawn on the same color as the light square B that white has. So after h6 here, we now get the move on one second, you guys, trying to figure this out because I don't have the right 33rd move. 1 second. In this position, I believe that we get this move bishop to b3 played here, and now we get the move bishop b7, bishop c4, bishop c6, bishop b3, bishop b7, bishop c4, bishop c6. Sorry, you guys, the notation I had was wrong. I had bishop to b6, not bishop to b3. My bad, you guys. Sorry about that. But at any rate, we get this repetition here, and on move number 36, the 10th game of the match ends once again in a very disappointing fashion with a quick draw. Out of all the games that have been played so far, this is easily the most disappointing because this really was not much of a game. Very early on, we knew the game was going to be a draw and what to do about it. So the game ends in a very, very boring draw. Not a lot to talk about, frankly. I could try to stretch this out, make some 30-minute recap by trying to create some drama about it, but ultimately just not a very exciting game. So what are my big takeaways from it? Now, since this game was so short, I will give you guys a couple of general thoughts. First thought is, it's very clear to me that from Ding's perspective, he is happy to be Ding chilling and make a bunch of draws with both colors. He is not afraid of going to tiebreakers here. Maybe that speaks to his mindset of thinking he's the favorite potentially. Zero risk of that. It's very clear that with the white pieces, he's happy to be solid, not take many chances, and just make the draws if the opportunities don't arise. So it's also clear to me that from that perspective for Gukesh, if he perceives himself to be an underdog in tiebreakers potentially, these last two games, games 11 and 13, where he has the white pieces, will be super critical. He will have to take some big chances and try to win. Now, having said that, another very important point that I want to make that I don't think I've really stressed in the recaps is generally when you go into a match format, especially when it's more than 2 games, 2 or 4 games, let's just say it's 8 or more, doesn't matter whether it's classical or rapid even, when you play a very long match, the player who's better prepared, if they're not able to strike early and often, as the match continues to drag on, it favors the player who is underprepared, or in this case, Ding, because the more games that happen, you're showing off all these great opening ideas, all these surprises, and when your opponent is able to hang in there, the surprises, they lose their effectiveness as there are more and more games. You start to run out of ideas, and it becomes a lot harder to surprise your opponent and win games. So that is definitely something that's trending in favor of Ding. As I look forward to games 11 and 13, it's a bit of a joke, but my view of this is that I would hope that the people who are working with Gukesh at this point, they were literally locked into their room. They were literally locked in their rooms, chained to the chairs, and studying the French all night long last night, or maybe over the last couple of days. Because to me, when I look at the openings, I feel like the best chance for Gukesh to win here in the next 2 games will be in 1e4, pawn to king 4, the best move in the game of chess. I don't really see him coming up with a great surprise in the Queen's Gambit declined or in the readies, so I think his second should be working very hard on the English, but he's gonna have to try really hard in the next 2 games to win with the white pieces, or the next 2 white games I should say, because if he's not able to win with the white pieces, I don't really see a world where he's going to win with black at this point in the match based on how solid Ding is playing. So it could go to tie breaks then, and I really do believe that Ding is a clear favorite in the tie breaks. Even if this is not the old Ding, let's not forget that Ding did win the Singfield Cup in 2019. He crushed Magnus Carlsen in a rapid tiebreaker. Of course, there's the obligatory mention of Magnus for everybody who's wondering. So he did crush Magnus in that tiebreaker, and you have to think that at this point, Ding is going to be a favorite in the tiebreaker. So I think from Gukesh's standpoint, or his team's standpoint, tomorrow is pretty much all-in situation. If not tomorrow, game 13, but you have to go all in, give it everything you have, and try to win with the white pieces, or else we're headed for a tiebreak, where I think Ding is a favorite. But again, we don't know what will happen. So it is what it is. Definitely a disappointing 10th round game in this match, but you know, you can't always get exciting games. So that's what happens tomorrow. As I've alluded to, I expect Gukesh to come out fighting. I expect a much more exciting game and a much more exciting recap, but that's going to do it for right now. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the 10th game of the 2024 FIDE World Chess Championship being held in Singapore between Ding Liren from China and Domoraju Gukesh from India. Match tied 5-5, anybody's ball game. We'll come back tomorrow with another recap, and we'll see what happens. So hope you guys have enjoyed the recap. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with a recap tomorrow. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day. See you guys soon. Bye.